By the autumn of 1944, a grim reality had set in for the American tanker in Europe. The M4 Sherman, the reliable workhorse of the U.S. Army, was being systematically outgunned and outmatched by German Panthers and Tigers. Panther panic was real. GIs wrote home in desperation, pleading for a tank that could give them a fighting chance. The answer, it seemed, was the M26 Pershing, a 46-ton monster with thick, sloped armor and a devastating 90mm cannon. It was the tank the frontline troops had been praying for. So when America's most famous, most aggressive, and most successful tank commander, General George S. Patton, Jr., was asked about the new heavy tank, his response was shocking. He didn't want it. In fact, he actively argued against halting Sherman production to build it. How could this be? How could old blood and guts, the man who believed in attacking, always attacking, turn down a bigger, better weapon? The answer reveals a deep, controversial, and often misunderstood truth about the nature of warfare, and the unique, brilliant mind of America's greatest battlefield commander. To understand Patton's logic, we must first understand the terror he was seemingly ignoring. The German Panther was a masterpiece of tank design, arguably the best all-around tank of the war. Its 80mm of sloped frontal armor was immune to the Sherman's standard 75mm gun. Meanwhile, the Panther's long, high-velocity 75mm cannon could kill a Sherman from over a mile away. The M4 Sherman, with its thin, vertical armor, earned a grim nickname from its crews, the Ronson Lighter, because it lights up the first time, every time. Now, it's crucial to acknowledge the historical debate here. Post-war analysis by historians like Stephen Zaloga has shown this reputation was statistically exaggerated. Shermans didn't burn more frequently than other tanks, but their thin armor meant they were penetrated far more often, leading to a higher chance of a fire. For the man inside the tank, the statistics didn't matter. What mattered was the tactical reality. The average engagement range in the hedgerows of Normandy was just a few hundred yards, but in the open country of the Lorraine, it stretched out. In those longer-range fights, the Panther and Tiger were kings. American tankers felt like they were in a death trap, forced to rely on flanking maneuvers and overwhelming numbers, often sacrificing 4 or 5 Shermans to kill a single Panther. They were desperate for a tank that could fight on equal terms. The M26 Pershing was that tank. So why did Patton resist it? Because Patton was not fighting the same war as his tankers. George S. Patton was the last of the great horse cavalrymen. His entire understanding of warfare, from his time as a young officer chasing Pancho Villa with motorized cars to his development of armored doctrine in the interwar years, was built on the principles of speed, exploitation, and relentless forward movement. He didn't see tanks as lumbering fortresses meant to slug it out. He saw them as mechanized cavalry. His famous doctrine was, hold 'em by the nose and kick 'em in the pants. This meant you used infantry and artillery to fix the enemy in a brutal frontal fight, pinning them in place. While the enemy was focused on this fight, your armored divisions, your mechanized cavalry, would race around their flank, deep into their rear, cutting supply lines, destroying command centers, sowing panic, and creating chaos. For this grand strategic strategy to work, Patton didn't need the best individual tank. He needed the right tank for the team. He needed a tank that was fast enough to exploit a breakthrough, reliable enough to not break down 100 miles behind enemy lines, light enough to cross Europe's aging bridges, and available in such vast numbers that he could afford to lose some and keep the advance rolling. For Patton, the M4 Sherman was, unequivocally, that tank. Patton's love for the Sherman was not born of ignorance. It was born of deep practical experience. He knew its flaws intimately, and he constantly pushed for the upgraded 76mm gun and better ammunition to give it a better chance. But he valued its 3 core strategic virtues above all else. First, and most importantly for Patton, was reliability. The Sherman, particularly his favored M4A3 model with its Ford V8 engine, was a marvel of mechanical dependability. German tanks were complex, over-engineered thoroughbreds that were a nightmare to maintain and broke down constantly. The Panther's final drive had a service life of less than 150 kilometers. The Sherman was a simple, rugged workhorse that just kept going. Patton knew that a Tiger with a broken transmission is just a pillbox. A running Sherman can win the war. Second, speed and mobility. The Sherman could maintain a strategic speed of 25 to 30 miles per hour on roads. This was the speed of exploitation, the speed of a cavalry charge. It was fast enough to keep the Germans constantly off balance during the race across France. Its weight, around 33 tons, meant it could cross the vast majority of European bridges without the need for combat engineers to build new ones, a critical factor in a high-speed advance. And third, numbers. America produced nearly 50,000 Shermans. Patton understood the brutal calculus of a war of attrition. He knew he would lose tanks, and he needed a logistical system that could replace them immediately. In a letter to the Ordnance Department, he praised the Sherman, stating his belief that its mechanical excellence and the ability to get there the fastest with the mostest was what mattered most in winning the war. Now, consider the M26 Pershing from Patton's purely strategic perspective. On paper, it was a tanker's dream. With its 90mm gun, it could kill a Panther from the front. Its armor could withstand a hit from a Panther's cannon. But in Patton's eyes, it was a strategic liability. At 46 tons, it was 13 tons heavier than a Sherman. This made it a logistical nightmare. It was too heavy for the standard pontoon bridges the Army Corps of Engineers used to cross rivers. This meant any river crossing would be a slow, deliberate, contested affair, the very opposite of Patton's style. It strained transporters and consumed more fuel, a resource Patton was constantly fighting for. Furthermore, it was mechanically unproven in combat conditions. The Sherman had been tested and perfected over years of war. The Pershing was a new machine with a new engine and transmission that was, in fact, underpowered for its weight. The last thing Patton wanted in the middle of a 200-mile advance was for his armored spearhead to grind to a halt with mechanical failures. He preferred the known, reliable quantity of the Sherman over the powerful but unproven potential of the Pershing. To halt production and retool for the Pershing in late 1944 would have meant a significant drop in the number of tanks arriving at the front, something Patton, who was always screaming for more of everything, would never accept. So, who was right? Patton or the tankers who were desperate for the Pershing? The nuanced truth is that they were both right, because they were fighting two different wars. The individual tank crewman was fighting a tactical war of survival. His world was the 500 yards in front of him. His job was to win the one-on-one duel with the tank in front of him. For that job, the M26 Pershing was undeniably the superior tool. It gave him a fighting chance to survive and win that duel. Patton, however, was fighting an operational and strategic war. His world was the entire map of Western Europe. His job was not to win individual duels. His job was to win the campaign. He needed to encircle and destroy entire German armies. For that job, a fast, reliable, and numerous tank was the superior tool, even if it was individually weaker. Patton wasn't blind to the Sherman's flaws. He simply believed its strategic virtues, its ability to win the war, outweighed its tactical vices. The debate over the Sherman versus the Pershing is a classic lesson in military philosophy. It's the difference between the best weapon and the best war winner. While the soldiers in the turrets rightly cursed the Sherman's thin armor, the man directing the war of movement saw it as the key to victory. George S. Patton's preference was not an indictment of the Pershing, but a testament to his unwavering belief in a specific high-speed doctrine of war. He chose the reliable workhorse that could sustain his blitzkrieg over the powerful thoroughbred that might have slowed it down. It was a commander's choice, made not for the battle, but for the campaign.
Thank you for watching the audio. Please subscribe to the channel to listen to more about other World War II military campaigns. Thank you so much.